In October 2011, a demolition crew stood at the base of a 210-foot concrete dam on the Elwha River in Washington state.
For 93
It was the tallest
years,
dam ever
this
removed
massive
in American
concrete
history.
barrier has
For
completely
93
cut off
years,
the river's
it had
flow.
blocked one of the most powerful salmon rivers in the Pacific Northwest. Within days of the first blast, something started moving upstream, something that hadn't been seen in that water since 1918. By the third week, researchers were finding salmon in places they weren't supposed to reach for years. By the sixth month, the river had rewritten itself. And by year 2, what those salmon did to the ecosystem downstream wasn't just recovery, it was transformation. Grizzly bears appeared where they hadn't been seen in decades. Eagles returned in numbers no one had counted before. And the riverbed itself began to shift in ways the models never predicted. This is the story of what happens when you give a river back to the species that built it, and why one dam removal in Washington became the most closely studied ecological event in North American history. The Elwha Dam was built in 1913 by a private power company. It was never designed with a fish ladder. For 9 decades, 5 species of salmon slammed into that wall every fall. Chinook, coho, sockeye, chum, and steelhead, all of them trying to reach the 70 miles of spawning ground locked behind concrete. By the 1990s, the Elwha's salmon runs had collapsed to less than 3,000 fish a year. Before the dam, scientists estimated the river supported nearly 400,000. In 1992, Congress passed the Elwha River Ecosystem and Fisheries Restoration Act. The plan was radical. Remove both dams on the
radical
river.
plan,
Let the
remove
sediment
both.
flow. Let the salmon return and see what happens. But no one knew what would actually happen, because no dam this size had ever been taken down before. The demolition began in September 2011. Engineers used controlled blasting and hydraulic excavators. They removed the dam in stages to avoid flooding downstream towns. Within 72 hours of the first breach, Chinook salmon was spotted upstream. Fisheries biologist George Pess was one of the first to see them. He said they moved like they'd been waiting their entire lives, because they had. Within 6 months, salmon were found 40 miles upstream, places they hadn't reached since before World War I. But it wasn't just the salmon that responded. By year 2, something else started happening in the river channel, something the engineers didn't predict. And it changed everything downstream. The sediment came first, 24 million cubic yards of it, trapped behind the dam for nearly a century. When the concrete came down, it all started moving. The Elwha turned brown for months. Thick, muddy, unrecognizable. Some locals thought the river was dying, but the salmon kept coming. They pushed through the murky water like nothing had changed, because to them, nothing had. This was the river they were born to find. By 2013, researchers started seeing something else. The riverbed was reshaping itself. Gravel bars appeared where there had been none. Deep pools formed in places that used to be flat. The salmon weren't just spawning, they were engineering. Every time a Chinook dug a nest, it moved stones. Thousands of salmon, each moving hundreds of pounds of gravel. The river was rebuilding itself from the inside out. Then the predators arrived. Bald eagles began gathering along the banks in numbers not seen since the 1950s. River otters returned. Black bears were spotted feeding on salmon carcasses in the upper reaches. And in 2016, a grizzly bear was filmed on a trail camera near the headwaters. The first confirmed grizzly in that area in over 80 years. But the most remarkable change wasn't on land.
Look at the
It
levels
was
on
in
this.
the ocean. Marine biologists began detecting a
We are
spike
definitely
in
detecting
nutrient
a
levels
nutrient spike
along
right
the
here.
coast, near the river's mouth. Salmon carcasses decaying in the upper river were releasing nitrogen. That nitrogen was washing downstream, feeding algae, feeding zooplankton, feeding everything. The Elwha wasn't just restoring a river, it was feeding the Pacific. One dam removal, 93 years of blockage undone, and a species that refused to forget where home was. If this kind of story matters to you, subscribe. There are more rivers waiting to be freed.